Hello, Linda? Ken's funeral is about to start. You're not really planning on not coming, are you? Excuse me? What are you talking about? Ken has passed away. You got a call from Marissa yesterday, right? I'm coming to pick you up, so get ready. It's been 3 years since I divorced my husband. Out of the blue, I received a call from my mother-in-law, whom I hadn't been in touch with for years, telling me to attend my ex-husband's funeral. Logically, it makes no sense to invite an ex-wife to her former husband's funeral after several years have passed. But what does she mean by "you got a call from Marissa"? My ex-husband was supposed to have died a year ago. Happening to be off from work, I, confused and not understanding the situation, got dressed in morning clothes just in case. 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang insistently. Come on, we're going. It's outrageous not to show up at the funeral of a husband you once relied on, even if you're divorced. That funeral? You mean the first anniversary, right? My mother-in-law frowned. What? The funeral is about to start, why would it be the first anniversary? Why am I not on the same page with my mother-in-law? A year ago, I was directly informed by Marissa, my ex-husband's current wife, of his passing. My husband passed away. I didn't contact you because I didn't want you to attend the funeral. But since you came to pay your respects, I thought I should let you know. At that time, I put $200 into a condolence envelope I had at home, intending it for incense money, and handed it over. When I mentioned this, my mother-in-law clicked her tongue quietly and furrowed her brows even more deeply. Just get in the car. Where's Alex? I'm not bringing Alex. I don't want him to see Marissa. Without saying anything more, my mother-in-law put me in the passenger seat and headed straight for the funeral home. With the early passing of my ex-husband as the starting point, I was clueless about what was happening, yet I was being dragged into an unimaginable situation. I'm Linda, 35 years old. A single mother with a 3-year-old son. Supported by my parents, I live at home and work as an office worker at a local real estate management company. Now, I find the lively and enjoyable child rearing at my parents' home fulfilling, but when my husband demanded a divorce 3 years ago, I felt as though my world had ended. Who could have imagined being abandoned right after giving birth, with a newborn in tow? Now, I'm grateful that I was able to start raising my child at my parents' house immediately after being discharged from the hospital, living happily ever since. I met my ex-husband through my aunt's introduction. Linda, there's a wonderful person I think you should meet. My aunt, who's close with my mom, occasionally comes over for chats. Without any preamble, she dropped this suggestion, nearly causing me to spit out my tea in surprise. My aunt runs a small restaurant and is known among her patrons as the matchmaking aunt, having successfully paired off several couples who ended up getting married. There's a relative of a regular customer, a son who's over 35 and still hasn't had any marriage prospects. I had him come to the restaurant once, and I must say, he's not only good looking but also has a great personality. Plus, he works at a major company. It was clear that my aunt was highly recommending him. She first approached me, a single woman past 30, with this proposal. While I wasn't actively seeking a relationship, I was aware of my unremarkable and dull existence. Out of respect for my aunt, I decided to take a leap and go along with her suggestion. On the day, as I headed to the hotel lounge where we agreed to meet, my future husband was already there, waiting. True to my aunt's word, he was a handsome man in a well-fitted suit, with a refreshing smile. After exchanging greetings, he asked me with a somewhat serious look. Do you seriously consider marriage, Linda? Not fully understanding his intention, I decided to be honest. I'm not against the idea, but to be honest, I came today to honor my aunt's request. Hearing that, my husband let out a relieved sigh and said, "That's good." He was 3 years older than me, not in a rush to get married, and, like me, had come to meet out of respect for a relative's wishes. Perhaps freed from the pressure of matchmaking, we both relaxed, and conversation flowed naturally between us. Maybe that was a good sign. It's strange how fate works. 2 people with no initial intention of marrying ended up getting married within a year. From the beginning of our marriage, my husband's work kept him busy, often coming home late at night. I hadn't dreamed of a sweet honeymoon phase, but it felt lonely starting our life together with him rarely around. I'm sorry it's like this even though we're newlyweds. I believe this is a critical time for me to work hard, so I hope you can bear with it. I'll let you know on the days I can come home. so don't worry about preparing meals for me otherwise. I don't have experience working in a large corporation, but according to him, socializing is crucial for advancement. I understand. But don't overdo it, okay? Yeah. Thank you. The loneliness I felt during the weekdays initially soon became normal, and I found myself getting used to it after just a month. Not having to rush home from work to prepare dinner was a relief. Moreover, my husband made sure to be home on weekends, valuing our time together by going out or dining together. Our relationship with my in-laws was, for better or worse, almost non-existent. You're married and a separate household now, so you two should make your decisions. From our initial greeting, my in-laws were indifferent and never interfered in our affairs. In a way, I think our marriage started off smoothly. Nearly a year into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. I'm happy, my husband said, but his demeanor became more distant as days passed. As my pregnancy progressed, he started to spend weekends away from home, leaving me alone more frequently. The severe morning sickness and quitting my job due to the pregnancy were significant factors. Hey, let's go look at baby stuff soon. We need to start getting ready. I've got something on this weekend. You go ahead. Pick whatever you like. Perhaps it was the hormonal changes making me emotionally unstable. But every time he said things like that, I felt a surge of sadness. Hey! This is your child too? Let's think about this together. Come on. I'm busy, you know. It's your child too, so you should prepare yourself. You have time during the day, so just go by yourself. Every time I brought up the topic of our child, my husband became increasingly irritable and raised his voice. Even though I realized a gap was forming between us, I felt powerless to do anything about it. Yet, at that time, I still believed that the birth of our child would bring about a change in him. When labor started, my husband was nowhere to be found. Despite numerous attempts to contact him, there was no response to my calls or messages. I called my mother and then headed to the hospital by taxi, where I safely gave birth to a boy. After waking up, I contacted my husband again, and he said, "Well done. It's pointless for me to be there now, isn't it? Let me know when you're being discharged. I'll come to pick you up." Hearing that provided me with a bit of relief. During my hospital stay, both my parents and my in-laws came to see the baby, taking turns holding him and saying, "He's so cute." Even my usually indifferent in-laws seemed genuinely happy at that moment. Although I was surrounded by happiness, the one person I wished most to be there, my husband, was absent. In the end, my husband never visited the hospital, not even once, and I found myself unable to share my feelings or seek advice from anyone. On the day of discharge, my husband came to pick me up from the hospital room at the time I had told him. As soon as he entered the room, I handed him our sleeping son without a word. For a moment, my husband looked surprised but then silently stared at his face, standing still. "The name's Alex, right? Hoping for a bright future." I was surprised that my husband had thought of a name for our son. I thought it was a good name. Surely, everything will be okay. At that moment, I couldn't help but believe that a fun and happy future with our baby awaited us. However, my hopes were shattered in an instant. Returning home for the first time in a week, I found a pair of high heels with ribbons I had never seen before at the entrance. Entering the living room, there was a young woman wearing a short dress. "I want a divorce. I've realized I don't want children after all." Without a chance to sit down, my husband said this and thrust divorce papers in front of me. "Why didn't you say something sooner? The child is already born. And why bring me all the way here if you wanted a divorce? It can't be helped, right?" Marissa said she wanted to meet you and apologize. I felt dizzy hearing my husband say this with a smirk on his face. I thought it might be nice to have a family and make a home for the sake of my career. But when I actually saw the pregnancy, I just felt like I couldn't handle it. What is he even talking about? Wait, what do you mean? So, you're saying the marriage itself was for the sake of your career? That's right. You were the type to obediently follow what I said. It was convenient having you around, not just for companionship but like a housekeeper for my needs while I still wanted to have my fun. I stared at my husband in disbelief. But I just can't do the kid thing. I don't want my time taken up by children. I was so shocked I couldn't find the words to respond. I had no idea he was this kind of person. I never imagined his late nights were spent with other women. The memories of what I thought were 2 happy years of marriage suddenly seemed tainted. Well, I did learn that being married helps with social credibility. So, I've decided to remarry this one who agrees with me on not wanting kids. Plus, she's prettier than you. With that, my husband pulled the woman closer by the shoulder. I'll pay you alimony and child support around the standard rate, so just send me the bill or whatever later. I'm really sorry it's come to this, ma'am. The woman said with a smug look, her apology lacking any sincerity. She probably wanted to see my devastated face. That's why, in front of this woman alone, I refused to let myself cry. The poor baby being born into this, really so sad. Feeling infuriated by her pitiful gaze directed at my son, I snatched the divorce papers my husband was holding out. I'll file these myself. Filled with misery, I wanted nothing more than to leave that place as quickly as possible. I'll send your stuff to your parents' house later. Thanks for everything until now. Bye-bye. Good luck being a single mom. Every word from that irritating woman made me want to punch her, but I silently turned and walked towards the entrance. The cardboard boxes stacked in the Japanese-style room next to the entrance were probably my belongings. They're all set to get rid of me. Holding my baby, I suppressed my frustration and left the familiar apartment behind. Despite my initial fury, by the time I reached my parents' house, I was utterly dejected and emotionless. With a blank expression, I started to explain what had happened, and my parents exploded with emotion on my behalf. That idiot! My father, face red with anger and ready to storm out and confront my husband, was held back by my mother and me. My father's anger was so intense, it seemed unlikely that merely hitting someone would satisfy him. As I tried to hold him back, tears naturally started to fall. Damn it! I was overwhelmed by frustration, sadness, anger, and despair. All the emotions I had been suppressing surged forth, and before I knew it, I found myself crying uncontrollably like a child. It was only when both my parents hugged me and cried with me that I began to regain my composure. I decided to inform my in-laws of the divorce over the phone. It pained my heart, especially since they had been happy about their grandchild's birth at the hospital just the other day. So, if that's what you two have decided, I won't say anything. It's a shame about the grandchild. I'm sorry for what Ken did to you. My mother-in-law apologized, but she did not suggest trying to mend the marriage. Perhaps her son's marriage and his affairs were never truly of concern to my in-laws from the start. Afterward, through a lawyer, I filed for alimony and child support, and the divorce was finalized without issue. The alimony for both of us was transferred in one lump sum by my husband. He probably wanted to settle everything quickly to move on with his remarriage. We agreed on a child support payment of $800 every month, but there was no demand for visitation rights with our son. Realizing he truly had no interest in our child, I felt a clear sense of closure. Thus, our marriage ended unceremoniously after just 2 years. After the divorce, I moved back to my parents' house with my son, Alex. Currently, I'm working as an office worker at a real estate management company nearby, thanks to a referral from my father's acquaintance. According to what my aunt told me, my ex-husband and his affair partner remarried almost immediately after our divorce was finalized. I named our son Alex because, in that moment at the hospital, it seemed like the one genuine thing my ex-husband expressed. I hope for a bright future for this child, and even if we never see his father again, I wanted to tell my son that he was loved by his father. A year after the divorce, when I had almost forgotten about him, I received a call from my ex-husband. I hadn't deleted his contact information because of the child support. Sorry to call out of the blue after such a long time. There's something I'd like to talk about, can we meet? Hearing my ex-husband's voice for the first time in a year, it sounded dark and lifeless, as if he were a different person. Sensing the seriousness of the situation, I agreed to meet him at a cafe near my parents' house after work the following day. Sensing the seriousness from his tone, I agreed to meet him at a cafe near my parents' house after work the next day. Actually, I've been diagnosed with an illness. It's already in a bad state. It's ridiculous that I didn't notice anything wrong with my own body until it got to this point. He said with a weak smile, leaving me at a loss for words. So, I might not be able to provide child support going forward. That's why I want to make our son the beneficiary of my life insurance. I was taken aback by his sudden offer, but I nodded silently to his earnest expression. Leaving a large sum of money to Marissa wouldn't do any good, he muttered under his breath. Driven by curiosity, I couldn't help but ask. What did you see in her? Was it her looks? Yeah, that was part of it. But despite appearances, she had her diligent moments. She seemed to understand what men wanted, knew how to reach out where it itched. Though, now I realize that was just her way of snagging a man. Somehow, his response made sense to me. I had never believed he was someone to marry solely based on appearances. But from the way he spoke, it seemed Marissa had outplayed him. Facing death, I've finally had the chance to reflect on my pointless life. The only thing of value I ever did was marrying you and bringing our child into this world. In the quiet cafe, only the sound of him sniffing echoed. I did something terrible to you back then. I'm an idiot for not realizing it until it came to this. I'm truly sorry. This is the only way I can make amends now. I could feel the sincerity in my husband's words. All right. Make Alex the beneficiary. He's named Alex? When I nodded, my husband, unconcerned about the onlookers, began to cry out loud. I felt a slight relief knowing that he indeed had a heart. Later, we met again to sign and stamp the documents as the legal guardian. While I pitied my husband, I also thought it was divine retribution and felt he deserved it, even at that moment. Half a year later, he informed me that he was going to be hospitalized. A few days after, I decided to take this as a final goodbye and went to visit him with our son, thinking it might be the last time. My husband was significantly more emaciated than when I last saw him, but he smiled upon seeing Alex. You've grown so much, Alex. Thanks to being taken around by his grandparents, Alex, who wasn't shy around strangers, smiled back at my husband. I'm really sorry. Such a cute kid. I was truly an idiot. It's my karma. As my husband cried, his face scrunched up, Alex gently patted him, comforting him. If only he had realized what was truly important sooner, my husband might have found happiness. Watching the two of them, the hatred I had for my husband seemed to disappear. However, as I left the hospital room and was descending to the first floor in the elevator, I encountered the last person I wanted to see. Hey! Why are you here? Marissa was there, wearing those ribbon-adorned high heels I remembered, and the humiliation I felt back then resurfaced from the depths of my heart. I was informed. So, I came to see my son for the last time. Marissa glared at me and Alex with disgust. Even though you were dumped? Don't you ever come back? If you do, I won't let it go. With those parting words, she boarded the elevator we had just exited and went back up. Although it was infuriating, I understood that it wouldn't feel good for an ex-wife and her child to visit unexpectedly. After that incident, I never went to the hospital again, nor did I intend to see them. But then, 3 months later, Marissa unexpectedly showed up at my parents' house. Sorry for the sudden visit. My husband passed away. I didn't contact you because I didn't want you at the funeral. But since you came to visit him, I thought I should let you know. Is that so? My condolences. Thank you for letting me know. Even though I had braced myself for it, the news of my once beloved husband's death weighed heavily on me. From now on, please don't contact me or my in-laws again. I never want to see your face again. Yes, of course. Oh, just one moment, please. I went inside and put $200 into a condolence envelope from a drawer, then handed it to Marissa. Please use this for flowers. Marissa's face twisted sourly for a moment, but after receiving the envelope, she bowed slightly and left. I thought this marked the complete end of my relationship with my husband. However, a year later, a call from my former mother-in-law entangled us in an unimaginable situation. The phone rang on a day when I was home alone, enjoying my day off. Hello, is this Linda? Ken's funeral is about to start. You surely don't plan on not coming, do you? Excuse me? What are you talking about? Ken has passed away. You were contacted by Marissa yesterday, weren't you? I'm coming to pick you up, so be ready and wait at the entrance. 3 years had passed since my divorce from my husband. The sudden call from my mother-in-law, with whom I hadn't been in contact, took me by surprise. Moreover, my ex-husband was supposed to have died a year ago. Confused, I nevertheless changed into morning clothes and prepared to leave. 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang incessantly. Come on, we're going. It's outrageous not to attend the funeral of a husband who treated you well, even if you're divorced. That funeral? You mean the first anniversary, right? My mother-in-law frowned. What? The funeral is about to start. Why would it be the first anniversary? Why isn't our conversation aligning? A year ago, Marissa, my ex-husband's current wife, had personally informed me of his death. I had even handed over a condolence envelope with $200 in it. When I mentioned this, my mother-in-law clicked her tongue quietly and her frown deepened. Just get in the car. Where's Alex? Alex isn't coming. I don't want him to see Marissa. Without saying anything more, my mother-in-law put me in the passenger seat and we headed straight for the funeral home. Logically, it's strange to invite an ex-wife who has been separated for several years to a funeral. Between my mother-in-law and Marissa, whose story was true. Caught in this unbelievable scenario, I was desperate to know the truth. Upon arriving at the funeral home, a monk had just begun the chanting. The funeral hall was small, indicating a service only for close family members. My husband's portrait was displayed on the altar. It indeed appeared to be my husband's funeral today. Feeling as if I'd been caught in an absurd twist, I couldn't help but let out a wry smile. The funeral proceeded without issue, and as we waited for the departure of the hearse, Marissa approached me aggressively. Hey! Why are you here? Didn't I tell you never to show your face again? Why are you attending without being invited? As always, Marissa's way of speaking was infuriating. I was the one who called her. Didn't I tell you that I would contact Linda? What? Use your head. I didn't want her here at the funeral. My mother-in-law sighed deeply, frowning. You lied about Ken dying a year ago and even accepted a condolence money from Linda. Is there another reason you were so adamant about her not coming? Marissa's face tensed for a moment, and I could hear her swallow hard. Linda, I invited you today because I thought you deserved to say thank you and farewell to Ken, considering how well he treated you. You were taken care of, so it seemed right to express gratitude and see him off. I tilted my head, confused by what my mother-in-law was saying. Despite receiving child support every month, didn't she always demand more? It was clear that Marissa was beginning to panic. Even though it wasn't hot, she was sweating profusely on her forehead. Yes, that's right. Since she was getting child support from him every month, she should pay her respects properly. But look, the funeral is over now, so you can go home. We'll say our goodbyes with just the family now. Come on, it's time for you to leave. Marissa, while making insistent gestures, tried to hurry me out by pushing on my back. Her actions were so unnatural that I started to understand the meaning behind my mother-in-law's frowns and sking. She must have been suspecting Marissa all along. I shrugged off Marissa's hand and turned squarely to face my mother-in-law. What? Additional child support? I haven't received anything beyond the agreed amount. I haven't been in contact with him for a long time. My mother-in-law's expression turned thunderous in an instant. So, you've been deceiving us all along. You complained about Linda's demands being too high, so I've been sending you $1,000 every month, and you've been pocketing all of it. I never imagined Marissa was exploiting me to extort money from my in-laws. Cornered by the stares from my mother-in-law and me, Marissa, realizing she couldn't make excuses, defiantly started to lash out. It's not my fault. He earned a lot but never let me spend freely. And it seems he had other women until he fell ill. I'm the one who was deceived. My husband did have a good salary from his job at a large corporation, but even when we were married, he only gave me a fixed monthly allowance. I never struggled financially, but his infidelity was undeniable. You could have lived comfortably without your extravagance, couldn't you? Ken said you were a useless money pit. Apparently, you hardly did any housework and spent your time gallivanting around. Ah, enough. Be quiet. It's his fault for not letting me have freedom. It's only natural for you in-laws to support me when your daughter-in-law is struggling. Finally, Marissa's true feelings came out. His inheritance rightfully belongs to me, his wife. Now I can finally have my freedom. So don't just invite his ex-wife as you please. The reason Marissa didn't want me at the funeral was all about the inheritance. For Marissa, the idea of my son, my husband's legitimate child, receiving any inheritance was something she desperately wanted to avoid. The relatives waiting for the departure of the hearse were frowning and whispering among themselves. Hearing the commotion, my father-in-law came over and apologized to me. "I'm sorry you got dragged into this mess. I'll get in touch on another day, so it's okay for you to head home now. Thank you for coming." Turning my back on the still arguing mother-in-law and Marissa, I left without waiting for the hearse to depart, feeling entangled in an unfortunate situation. I hoped this would be the end, but I couldn't shake off a bad feeling. Unfortunately, my intuition would prove correct in the coming months. Nearly 3 months later, something unthinkable happened. It was a holiday, and we had gone to a large park with a packed lunch. The park, essentially a vast forest, was bustling with families and couples. Alex, now 3 years old, was energetically tireless, with my parents and me taking turns keeping up with his play. While my dad and I were lying on the leisure sheet, my mom, who had gone with Alex to the playground, came back panicked. "Alex is missing! Hurry up! Alex is gone!" Alarmed by her frantic demeanor, we all rushed over but couldn't find Alex around the slide where he had been playing. He slid down once and went back up to slide again, so I waited below. But he never came back down. The large athletic-style slide was crowded with children that day, with kids disappearing inside momentarily. Instead of focusing on the slide, I expanded my view and scanned the surroundings again. Then, I spotted Alex's yellow hat as he was walking along a path beyond the playground. It appeared he was being led by a woman I didn't recognize. "Alex!" Hearing my shout, Alex stopped and looked back, and at that moment, the woman holding his hand started to run with him in her arms. "Wait!" Before I could start running, my father, who jogs as a hobby, had already sprinted ahead. My heart raced with fear, making it hard to run as I wanted. I called out to my father ahead. "Dad. They're heading towards the parking lot." My father increased his speed and shouted for help. "Someone. Please stop that woman. She's kidnapping a child." The woman reached her car, trying to throw Alex into the passenger seat and get into the driver's seat herself, but she was unable to. Several young dads, responding to my father's cries, managed to grab the woman just as she was about to get into the car. "Alex! Alex!" After my father took the sobbing Alex out of the passenger seat, he handed him over to me, who had arrived shortly after. Relieved, I collapsed to the ground, hugging Alex tightly. "Don't interfere. Because of that kid, I don't get any money. If only he wasn't there. If only he would disappear." The woman was Marissa. Her eyes were bloodshot, and the way she screamed, spitting and raging, was clearly deranged. Trembling, I couldn't say anything back, just watched as the out-of-control Marissa was taken away by the arriving police car. Later, my father-in-law contacted me to apologize and discuss the receipt of my ex-husband's life insurance. It seemed my in-laws had been informed by my husband to proceed in this manner, but they had kept it a secret from Marissa until discussions about the inheritance could be held. Apart from the life insurance, Marissa was to inherit everything else, but it turned out there wasn't much of an estate left. The substantial alimony paid out for our divorce 3 years prior and the expenses for his illness had left little money. However, there wasn't just one insurance policy, and Marissa must have received a significant sum, at least in the hundreds of thousands. Marissa had been splurging on young hosts, you see. She's always been reckless with money, and it seems she had a considerable amount of debt. She likely used the inheritance to pay off her debts, but it's unclear if she managed to settle them all. My father-in-law sighed deeply, sounding exasperated. More than anything, she couldn't stand knowing the amount of insurance money left for Alex. The insurance money my husband left to Alex was $400,000. It seems Marissa naively believed that if the beneficiary, Alex, were to pass away, the insurance money would automatically go to her. Items such as adhesive tape, rope, and a knife were found in Marissa's car, and during police interrogation, she reportedly confessed to planning to kidnap and kill Alex. Recalling Marissa's deranged look at that moment sends shivers down my spine even now. Perhaps their overbearing love swung from excessive interference to non-interference. We interfered too much in Ken's life out of love, it seems. Our relationship worsened around the time he went to college. So, we learned to keep our opinions to ourselves and respect the decisions of our adult son, they said. Perhaps their overbearing love swung from excessive interference to non-interference. But we should have been there for Alex. We should have supported you more. I'm truly sorry. Finally, my mother-in-law added. Alex was the name of Ken's childhood friend, from a family that respected his own decisions, unlike ours. He's fulfilling his childhood dream of being a pilot now. She dabbed her nose with a handkerchief. So, I think Ken wanted Alex to have a life like his friends. Thank you for keeping the name my son suggested for our grandson. There's no doubt that the moment my husband first held our child, he wished for a happy future for him. Just knowing that was more than enough for me. While I can't forgive what my husband did, I no longer harbor any hatred towards him. Considering the future, our family has decided to move to my mother's hometown, which is a plane ride away. It seems Marissa won't be getting out from behind bars anytime soon, but truly, I never want to see her face again. We were dragged into an unbelievable situation, but it brought some clarity. Someday, I want to tell Alex, your dad truly wished for your happiness. Moving forward, our family of four intends to live happily, respecting each other's decisions.